With Halloween coming up, what is your story of the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you? Last year I was dog sitting for my parents while they were on holiday. They live in a very rural countryside village, in an old barn conversion, and I hate staying there by myself. So about 10 days into house sitting, I woke up at 4 a.m. and could hear something downstairs. Thinking I had somehow gone to bed and left the TV on, I went down to the lounge, but the TV was off. Very confused at this point, I wandered into the hall looking for the source of the sound. Both the dogs were sat very alertly outside the office door. Then I saw that light was coming from behind the office door. I have absolutely no explanation for what happened that night. The computer in the office is my brother's, and he had been sailing in Europe for 2 months at this point, and his computer was always password protected. However, on this night, the computer was on, unlocked, and the noise I could hear was a YouTube video about Soviet experiments of dog head transplants. I worked from home the next day, as I was so scared I'd come home to find my dog's heads had been switched. Edit. Commenter is correct. It was Soviet experiments, not Nazi. I was too scared to Google it again. I was working as a bartender at a hotel that a flight attendant was murdered in room 354 at about a year before the incident. Anyhow, it was close to closing time when the mod, a very small woman, comes into bar and tells me she needed my help. It seems the fire panel is showing an alarm in room 354 which had been somewhat cleaned and left vacant since the murder. So the two of us go up the elevator and start heading down the long L-shaped corridor. As we round the corner, we can see papers had been shoved under the door from inside the room with "Help me" written on them, so the manager puts her master key in the lock and opens the door to pitch black in the room, and we hear, "Thank God you have finally come." We both instinctively jump back and then see one of our maintenance workers stroll out the door. It seems maintenance had been using the room for storage, and once he went inside the door, the knob was broken off on the inside. There were no lights or phone in the room, so he held his lighter up to the fire alarm. Edit. For more information on the murder and killer, Google search Nancy Ludwig. Imagine how scary it was for him waiting in there in the pitch black, knowing the history of the room. When I was a senior in high school, a bunch of my friends and I used to drive into the hills to drink and get away from our parents. I was the DD one night and drove back 4 of my friends. 2 of the girls were really drunk and started puking, so we pulled over in a park. Both of the girls started puking outside my car doors, and then this pickup rolled up behind us and had its high beams on us. I thought it was the cops and was just waiting for them to bust us, but the person in the car just stayed there. Eventually, we closed the doors and drove away. The pickup followed us. I started driving faster and through a neighborhood I knew really well, taking every turn and starting to speed up. But the pickup kept following us. Eventually, my friends needed to puke again, and we pulled over. The pickup stopped behind us and again just kept its lights on us. I looked through my rearview mirror and saw an older white guy with a beard. He started reaching for something in his glove compartment. At that point, I freaked out, told my friends to pull my other friends in the car, and floored it. We took a couple turns and lost the guy. We stayed in a driveway of a random person for like 15 minutes and then decided it was safe. We turned back onto the main street and the pickup truck was waiting for us. I drove as fast as I could down the main street and the pickup kept following us. Eventually, at the bottom of a hill, there was a massive accident and a bunch of police cars and fire trucks. I started to slow down like I was going to pull over towards the police. The pickup overtook us, ran a red light in front of the cops, and I never saw him again. I have no idea who that guy was or what he wanted, but it was terrifying. Gather around, boys and ghouls, and I will tell you the chilling tale of the twisty-tied lady. I have posted this once before, but figured I'd share it again. Apologies in advance for formatting, I'm on mobile. This happened about 12 years ago. I was still living at home in high school. My parents purchased a condo from a family friend and we moved in. The lady, family friend's mother, we bought the condo from had passed away of natural causes inside the condo. She was an older lady, friendly from what I hear. She also dabbled in sorts of witchcraft/black magic. I don't believe she was casting evil spells on anyone, more of hobby, I suppose. So anyway, we move in. Most of her belongings were left behind, so my parents kept the stuff they needed. Mostly furniture and coffee tables. After months of living there, we had a suspicion that we weren't alone. Now, this wasn't your typical haunted house scenario. There were no flickering lights, strange noises, or lurking shadows that led us to this belief. It was twisty ties. Yes, just like the ones that come with the loaves of bread you buy from the store. Every now and then, we would find these strange twisty ties around the house. These random-ass twisty ties would seemingly appear out of thin air, almost strategically placed so they would be noticed. Like, I'd be hanging out on the couch watching TV, go to the kitchen to fetch a tasty beverage, and come back to find a stray twisty tie just chilling on the coffee table. We'd find them wrapped around cords, on countertops, in desk drawers, even one time wrapped around my toothbrush. Each one unique in the shape, color, and placement. It certainly wasn't a shit your pants moment, but over time living there, you'd start to look for it and anticipate it. There were 3 of us that lived there, and of course we all blamed each other, and of course none of us ever fessed up to it. Over the years, however, there were enough isolated instances each one of us had encountered to deny it. It was kind of fun, actually. We named her the Twisty Tie Lady, and I started to collect them in my nightstand drawer just for funsies. I always wondered, why twisty ties? I tried extensive research on the web about twisty ties, and if they had any significance in witchcraft, and found nothing. A few years later, after moving out, I had learned that when the lady was alive, it became a little inside joke between her and daughter, the family friend, to save all her twisty ties for further use. I guess that was her way of reaching out in the afterlife. Sadly, the condo complex had been wiped out from a flood. But to this day, every time I see a twisty tie, I smile. I was walking at 10 p.m. at night in a park that had a forest trail with some friends to ghost hunt. We were a group of about 10 people. Anyway, I kept hearing footsteps behind me and near us, and nobody was there. I was in the back of the group since no one wanted to be there, you know, human shields and all. So I was more in the open, trailing behind a bit with a partner, when out of nowhere, I heard a loud blood-curdling scream. Sounded like a girl screaming bloody murder. It surprised me because I didn't expect it, and I jumped on the spot. I glanced at the scaredy cat of the group, no reaction. I glanced at my partner, and the group, all no reactions. So I just shook it off. But then, I heard children laughing and more footsteps away from us in the direction I heard the scream. Nobody was there. After that, we reached a dead end, turned back, and left the trail. I asked my friends if they heard the scream, and they all gave me a blank look. "What scream?" one of them asked. So I told them, and confirmed no one else heard it. A few years later, I decided to look up the park, and it turns out a girl was shot and killed in that park. My condolences to that girl. Also, there have been reports of other people hearing children at night as well, even though there are no children outside past curfew. Did they believe you? Yeah, they did. This isn't next level creepy, but it sure freaked me out. I was walking to the bus stop one morning my first semester at uni. I had started going by my middle name at this point. Some guy that I have never seen before crosses my path for a second, looks me square in the eye, and yells my full name. I was really stressed out and sleep deprived at the time, and I am still unsure if this actually happened or if it was a hallucination. Edit. There was definitely no name tag involved. You good fam. Just somebody trolling with their Shinigami eyes. Posted this on another thread. I was a police officer who had a talent for talking violent/emotionally disturbed people down and defusing situations. We had a bag lady named Annie who we would get calls on regularly, shoplifting, disturbing the peace, etc. Depending on her mood, she would sometimes fight officers trying to arrest her. No one wanted to hurt her, so taking her to custody could be an ordeal. Also, Annie didn't bath regularly, but she compensated by applying generous amounts of Stetson aftershave. It would make your eyes water, and would stay in your car for hours. The first time I had to arrest her, I talked to her in my Fraser Crane voice, and it went pretty smoothly. On the way to the jail, I asked Annie if she'd eaten. When she said no, I stopped and got her a 2-piece chicken meal with biscuit. I then drove slowly to the jail, so she could eat. From then on, when she'd get in trouble, she'd request me to take her to jail. Fast forward, I've been promoted to sergeant. My marked cruiser number 61 was parked in the motor pool lot to be reissued. I was as a supervisor assigned an unmarked car. Later that afternoon, I responded to a fatal accident that one of my guys was working. It was Annie. She had been run over by a truck and killed. I was pretty upset because I had taken the unofficial title of her protector, and I should have been around to keep this from happening. Later that night, a deputy from the sheriff's office called in and said someone was hiding in one of our cruisers in the back lot. I was heading in to do paperwork and got there first. The deputy told me via radio what car it was, number 61. I went to the car and saw no one in it. Another officer brought a key and we unlocked it to check for any damage, etc. When I opened it up, the first thing I smelled was Stetson aftershave. This isn't creepy to me. It's almost heartwarming that she wanted to say goodbye to you. My dad died when I was. Fast forward to when I'm like 14. My abusive ex-stepdad gotten out of jail, and I was so worried and upset. I walked to my room, and the hallway reeked of his cologne. I screamed and called for my mom, who smelled it too. He just telling me that it was gonna be okay. I wish he'd come back and do it again. I have read this before, so I assume this isn't the first time you have told the story. It sounds to me like when she died, she was scared, and so went to the only place she felt safe before she could move on. One night, I was driving home from my then girlfriend's house. I was crossing a bridge and saw the figure of a man standing at the edge. It was around 1 or 2 in the morning, but I didn't really think too much of it. I veered over to give him plenty of room, and he turned towards me. His skin was pure white, and when his eyes locked onto mine, I felt a horrible feeling of terror sweep over my body. He jumped off the bridge, and I saw a white streak fly away from where he jumped. I drive over that same bridge every time I'm home from college, and I've never seen him or felt the same feeling since. I've told this story to a couple people, and a few have also told me they experience weird shit in that same area. I don't normally believe in anything supernatural, but I don't have any rational explanation for what I know I saw and felt. Mothman. My family moved into a condo my freshman year of high school. It was a newish development in the rural part of town. The first month or so went smoothly, but after a while, my parents started talking about weird stuff that was happening around the house. The lights in the fixtures would stop working all of a sudden, even if my dad had just replaced them. Upon further inspection, they found out the lights had actually been unscrewed and left loose inside the fixture. And these were those lights on the ceiling that kind of look like a boob, so it's semi-labor intensive to reach the actual bulb. A few more months went by and they were mostly uneventful. And then my mom moved into my bedroom. She had been sleeping on an air mattress, And one of the first nights, she claimed that she woke up at 3 a.m. to the feeling of someone sitting on the end of the bed. Another night, she woke up feeling like someone was trying to pull the blanket off of her from the foot of the bed. A couple weeks later, she woke up to the sound of the window shade hitting the wall, as if someone had lifted it up above their head and let it drop it back down. The next night, she double-checked to see if the windows were closed and locked. They were. She woke up the sound of the shades again and the bedroom door slamming shut. I was kind of skeptical about all these stories, just because I never woke up to any of this, but I sleep like a rock and the house gave me weird vibes anyway, so I kept an open mind. Then one night, after my mom had officially abandoned my room, I woke up around 3 to 4 a.m. with sleep paralysis. It was the first time it had ever happened to me, so I didn't know what was going on. I was too busy panicking to look around the room. When I finally calmed down, I noticed this shadow at the foot of my bed. It was the distinct outline of a tall, thin man with a wide-brimmed hat. I just kind of looked at him for a while trying to process what was in front of me, and he didn't really move, he just stood there and looked back. I eventually closed my eyes and tried to go back to sleep. In the morning, I told my mom what happened, and she pretty much immediately scheduled an appointment with a medium. To put a long story short, the woman ended up telling us that the man I saw was a farmer who owned the land we lived on, and he was pissed that a bunch of strangers were squatting on his property. So I guess he was trying to spook people into leaving. I never knew any of the neighbors, but I wonder if they had to deal with the same shenanigans. TLDR, ghost farmer wants these kids off his lawn. Just finished watching Annabelle with a friend and was walking home, remembering a particular scene where the demon's eyes glow in the dark and stares at the protagonist before jumping out. Me and him start talking about what we would do if that happened, and right as he says, "It's just fake," we hear a screeching noise to our right on a dirt path alleyway to a run-down house. We live in a small medium-sized city. We turned to see what it was, a little freaked out. Two glowing eyes, staring right back at us. We can see a slight silhouette from some moonlight. It has horns. My friend books it, and I stand there frozen, waiting to die. It steps forward a bit more so I can barely see it because of a streetlight. Turns out it was just a deer. After calming down, I walked forward a bit to see what the screeching sound was. It was just two sheets of metal roofing scraping together because the deer knocked them over. Was really expecting to be dead at that moment. When I was 6, our next door neighbor was on top of his house in a sheet. He had a trumpet he played when people came to his door. Do not know why, but that shit scared the crap out of me. I was maybe 13. I was staying at my cousin's house during a weekend, and one night, I had a really vivid dream. In that dream, I woke up in the middle of the night, and for some reason walked out of our room. I remember it was really vivid, like it wasn't a dream, but something just felt off. It was way too silent and really eerie. I opened the door, and there was like 100 white snakes on the floor bunched up together and slithering around. There's a single snake sticking out from the middle of the pile, and it has red eyes, and it stood there really still staring at me. I froze in front of the door, just staring back at it for a few minutes before I woke up for real. It was the feel of the whole thing that creeped me out. But I thought it was just a stupid nightmare, and didn't tell anyone and kinda forgot about it. Well, a few weeks later, I was back at my cousin's, and we were just talking with her superstitious housekeeper when she told us that she believed a guardian spirit in the shape of a white snake with red eyes is protecting the house, and that it has visited her in a dream. My cousin laughed it off, but I was spooked. She told us about her dream, and it's the exact same dream. I didn't tell anyone about my dream. What are the chances of us having the exact same dream? I don't believe in ghosts or guardian spirits, but this still freaks me out when I think about it. I never stayed in that house again. 100% happened. A few years ago, I went on a backpacking trip in the Sierras with some guys from work. The plan was to drive out after work on Friday night, make the 3 to 4 mile hike to the lake, and set up camp. We get to the trail around 11 p.m., strap on our packs and headlamps, and get moving. The trail is dark and quiet. I have my dog with me, and he's moving at a good clip. I eventually notice I'm pretty far ahead of the group. I can't even see their headlamps anymore, and my dog starts acting weird and hyper alert. I hear a faint jingling noise just as my dog stops abruptly and raises his hackles. I turn in that direction, only to see a huge set of eyes about as tall as I am staring at me from the woods. Oh fuck, you panic. I know there are bears in the Sierras, and that they don't like noise, so I slowly back away and start calling out to my friends, but my dog will not move. So for a good few minutes I just stood there, staring at these huge eyes, hoping I wasn't going to die. When my friends caught up, I told them what happened, pointed out the eyes in the woods, and they started laughing hysterically. It was a cow. I had never been backpacking in the Sierras before, and had no idea that cows just wandered around the backcountry eating grass. I felt pretty stupid, but honestly, in the moment it was pretty terrifying. I was kayaking with a Boy Scout troop in a river. We come across what looks like a dead deer, or a wild rock of some sort. Upon closer inspection, it was a dead, naked woman. The leaders called the cops, who told us it was suicide. Later that night, I found out it was a rape and murder, and the next day the perpetrators were caught. This is secondhand, from a post on Reddit that I probably can't find anymore. A woman posted that she had trouble opening the door to her baby son's nursery, and saw the gray hand of a very old person holding it, the fingers reaching around from the other side. The woman responded to my question about whether she had an old relative living there, but she didn't. She presented this as true, and had no explanation. This is, if true, the creepiest thing I have ever read on Reddit. I mean, I guess there are creepier things, but this one was so matter-of-fact, and did not involve skinwalkers or werewolves. My experiences began fairly young. I've always seen and heard things. I've had a few dreams that came true. It always freaks out my mom when I know someone has died. The scariest thing that ever happened was as a teenager. My friend proclaimed herself a white witch and studied all about it. She brought her Ouija board over once, and we were messing around with it. We contacted something that said he was my cousin. I had an interesting time, but didn't really put a lot of faith in it. I've seen how those things were debunked. Anyway, this entity said it was going to play a joke on my mom, and the board went dead for a few minutes. When it came back, we asked what happened, and the response said, "You will see." About a minute later, my mom came in my bedroom and asked me what I wanted. I told her I didn't know what she was talking about. Mom said, "I was in the laundry room, and when I turned around, you were standing there smiling. I asked what you wanted, but you never said anything. I went back to the laundry, and when I looked up again, you were gone." I had never left my room. This thing made itself look like me, and my mom interacted with it. I told my friend not to bring that board back. She put it in a box like a cedar chest or hope chest and piled stuff on the lid. When I came over, we could hear the lid trying to open. Eventually, we ceremoniously burned it. I walked into my house from the garage and went straight to the back door to let the dogs out. I pretty quickly went back to close the door to the garage, which I had left open when I came in. The door was closed and locked, and the chain was on it. There wasn't anyone else home at the time, and I have no memory of closing the door, much less locking it. I was really creeped out for the rest of the night. So the question is, who let the dogs out? Obviously Opie did. He said so himself. Are you even paying attention? When I was 12 years old, I was chilling downstairs watching TV on the couch with my dog relaxing across the room. Out of nowhere, he stood up completely alert and started growling with his hackles raised, watching the staircase. To my dismay, his gaze followed from the staircase, across the room, and ended up staring next to me, growling louder than ever, practically snarling, which he never did. He was a Bichon, a fluffy, friendly little white dog. I don't know if it was my imagination, but at the time I was pretty damn sure I felt coldness in the air next to me. I noped the fuck out, sprinted across the room, grabbed the dog, and ran up the stairs. Never had anything ever happen like that again. My mom still lives in that house. I've lived in my house for about 8 years now. I've joked multiple times during conversations with friends that I love my house, because in the entire time we've been here, I've never felt creeped out or uneasy. I love my house because it's definitely not haunted, have been my exact words. Cut to a couple weeks ago. I'm downstairs. We have one bedroom in the corner of the basement that's been nothing but clutter and storage. I decide I'm going to clean it out, paint, and make into an office of sorts. So I'm home alone, except for my 2 lazy doggos, and I'm downstairs painting. I'm standing up on a ladder doing the edge work around the crown molding, and out of nowhere I get this feeling, this ominous, heavy, claustrophobic feeling, and all the fight or flight alarm bells inside me start going off. Half a moment later, my sleepy lazy doggos, who have been sleeping in sunspots on the living room floor all day, just start going nuts, barking and howling like they're scared out of their minds. My first thought is, damn it, house, after all this time you're going to pull this shit on me? I thought we were cool. So as calmly as I can muster, I step down off the ladder and go see what's got my dogs so freaked out. They're barking out the front windows, so I step out on the front porch to find some guy walking around from the side of my garage. I keep the side gate padlocked, but he must have thought no one was home. It was the middle of a weekday, and maybe he would have a look around. He was surprised when he saw me and made some excuse about meeting someone to buy shingles, but he must have the wrong address, and then he was gone. I went back inside thinking, damn, thanks for looking out, house. It's amazing what our instincts can detect, hey? And dogs have been around people for a long time because they're good at doing exactly what they did there. Maybe you have a benevolent, chill house aura going on. When I was about 13, 2 friends and I were held against our will by an elderly lady with dementia on Halloween for a couple hours. We were trick-or-treating, and she invited us into her house so she could show us pictures of her missing cat. We knew we shouldn't have accepted her invitation, but didn't think this little old lady posed any threat. She didn't even know what year it was, let alone that it was Halloween. I felt bad because by the time we finally managed to get past her and leave, she was pleading with us not to abandon her again. Some friends and me used to mess around with a Ouija board at my parents' house. I don't think we bought it, we were just bored and drinking. 2 experiences come to mind that still make me wonder though. First, we spoke to a woman who said she was watching us and had been for years. That night, of course, me and another guy in another room dreamed about a woman in each room. I know that sounds obvious, but when the guy described her and then told me about the hourglass she was holding, I flipped. That's exactly what she was holding in mine too. Second, another night. It was a Friday, and one of the things to do where I live is go to this huge citywide car show a couple of hours away. Whoever we were talking to said that DM would wreck going to the show. One of the guys had those initials and actually had plans to go. He was so freaked out he canceled. On Monday morning we got to school and found out that another guy with those initials had wrecked on his way over. He had a broken arm. Luckily nothing too serious. We quit playing with it after that, and nothing ever happened again. I'm a down-to-earth guy, and the feelings of those nights have faded, but the facts are hard to ignore. Thank you so much for watching. In the comments below, share the scariest thing that has ever happened to you. And don't forget to watch our other videos.